Welcome to the Matchcast, the match fishing podcast with me, Jake Fowles, my co-host Rich Chapman, and today's star guest, Andy Findlay. We'll start, Andy, with your life in fishing. So, as we always do, how did you get into fishing? Where did it all begin?
Well, remembering back, I must have been around about 12 years old. It was soon after we'd moved from Findlay to a little village called Barsby, which is on the outskirts of Melton Mowbray. And because I moved out into the sort of small village with not a lot going around it, I got loads of time on my hand, and I just thought to myself it'd be good to go fishing one day. There was a small brook in the neighbouring village, Gadsby. There was a neighbouring village, and the brook was called the Gadsby Brook, but it run from way up in Twyford village, which was about 3 miles away from Barsby, and it ended up in the River Reek at Syston, so it's quite a long brook, and it was solid. There's tons of fish in it.
What were you catching? Was it?
Well, there was millions of minnows in it. I remember to this day, millions. It was a job to get through them, but there was stacks of dace, good sized dace, loads of roach, chub. The biggest chub I caught out of that brook, going back all that time, with 4 pounds, which is a massive fish for a small brook that you could jump across on some of it, and other parts were wider, but right through the length of the brook you could about see the bottom, you know, when it was normal level and fine down. But yeah, it was full of perch, roach, dace, loads of minnows. It was solid with fish, just a natural stream that, you know, run probably 10 miles of its length, 10 to 15 miles long it was.
And was that on your own, or did you go with friends or family, or how did you sort of?
Well, it was just my own idea initially, and it was during my school years, and of course you got schoolmates, and from the same village, Barsby, where I lived. I had 2 or 3 mates from that village, and you know, after a while, I went fishing with them. Well, it was always me who was sort of the one who wanted to go. They just come along for the crack, and you know, had a few little fiddles together and that, trying to catch who caught the most fish. I remember sometimes, without even using a rod, we used to get in the water with wellies on and pull over these, you know, in the shallows, and there'd be like stone loaches this big and big bullheads underneath. They were amazing. Like, I'm sure if you went back there now, there'd be nothing. And I know for a fact, it was only a year or 2 ago, I had a walk along the same stretch where I used to fish, and you can, you know, walk along the brook, look down, looking for fish, nothing. The brook's empty now. It's crying shame, but yeah, at least, you know, in them years, I witnessed it and, you know, enjoyed the fishing from there. I caught some really big fish, as I say, a 4 pound chub in just a small stream, really.
Yeah.
You know, a great fish, and I spent 3 or 4 years, you know, in them early years, fishing that brook, you know, alongside my mates. Great memories.
And that sort of kicked it on, and from there, moving on.
Yeah.
So
yeah, right.
You started off on a lot of natural venues, so canals, rivers,
That's right.
water, lakes, and that was the sort of first 10 years or so of your fishing, roughly, would you say?
It was, yeah. Soon after me brook fishing, as I say, the brook ran into the Reek down at Syston, and that was the first sort of, although I was a junior member at East Goscote Juniors, and we had competitions then. We'd all go off, there was a match every 2 weeks, and we'd go all over the country, well, within the Midlands area, you know, 20 or 30 juniors, fishing venues like the North Bank of the Nene. I've got a trophy up on the shelf here of the match I won. There it is, East Midlands Fed Junior match, and I won that with 1 bream and a couple of roach. That's all, £3 I had, which we never caught much in them days.
No.
But yeah, that was my first taste of match fishing with the junior club. And then after that, I was really keen into fishing, wanted to learn. You know, that's all what really life meant to me at the time. I think that was just about leaving school and looking for work, that sort of age. And then it's a winter, you know, lots of winter leagues going on in the area. The Saw Winter League was my sort of area. I joined a club called RKC, and I was involved in their members' matches, fishing alongside, you know, big early burly blokes,
yeah.
You know, from a junior sort of straight up into the older guys. And I always remember doing well in the matches, not winning many, but, you know, always up there. And I was starting to learn off other anglers in them days, because obviously there was better anglers than myself fishing these
Were there any
these matches.
mentors or people that stood out to you as helping you along in them early years?
Well, I could mention a few names, yeah. Now, I think they're all still with us. As far as I know, there's 3 names that stand out in my memory that I learned quite a lot from in them years. A guy called Mick Farmery. That'll definitely ring a bell to the viewers watching within the area. Stevie Gardner, not the Stevie Gardner down south.
No,
there's another one, a great lad. I know he's still about. And a lad called John Deacon, who doesn't fish anymore. Really nice guys. I hope he's still about, but can't say for sure. So they're the 3 sort of guys. I used to travel around about, you know, around, because I were hitching rides with them, going over to the Neen, and, you know, I wasn't driving in them days. I was still on my motorbike, as I remember. I used to go fishing on that with my rods along the
straps along the
frame. That's right. Yeah, so leading on from that, because I was a member of RKC, they had a team in the Winter League, Saw Valley Winter League, which was the biggest sort of winter league in our area for you know, well, it was the main winter league. And you know, that I really enjoyed that. It was 6 matches long. The big matches, 12 teams of 15 anglers, as I remember.
Brilliant.
So it's a big match.
Yeah, really.
All the way along, started at Cossington, right through to the end of Normanton, which is a long stretch of river. This is the River Saw I'm talking about. And that's really where my river fishing stayed on the whole, you know, right through to me swapping over from natural fishing to commercial fishing.
And when did that sort of happen, that transition, and why did that happen? What made you sort of move away towards commercial?
For me to jump from that to then, there's a lot that happened in that time.
Oh, fill us in with that then first.
Yeah, well, what I'd like to talk about is me moving up the ranks through the clubs I joined and learning off better anglers than myself in all this team fishing. So it was East Goscote Juniors for a start. Then I met the big boys at RKC, fully grown men, you know, a bit daunting, so it was only a little squirt of a kid. And then from Reek, I was asked by another team in the Winter League, Shepshed Charterhouse. Really well-known team, not the best team in the Winter League, but they could win a match. Yeah. You know, the team could be first position in one of the Winter Leagues throughout the 6 matches, but it was fairly rare. But there were regular top 3 placings that were in, which was a better team than Reed used to do. You know, the better results that Reed used to have. And fishing, you know, a few more years went by, fishing with Shepshed, great bunch of lads. We entered the Sundridge Super League, and that meant that we had to travel to the Trent, the Neen, the Witham, Welland, you know, all these sort of far away venues. So it got me out, you know, where all the sort of bigger matches were happening. And as I say, a few years passed and fishing the Winter League, and I get approached by Trev Tomlin, no other, who was at the time the census boss, the UK boss for census ground baits.
Yeah.
And Leicester AS, as it used to be, it turned into Leicester Census by then.
Yeah.
And Trev, just sit down there and just take it all in. Trevor, Trev Tomlin, he asked me to join Leicester, and it was great, you know, it was, anytime. Sorry, lads, Shep, I've got to move, because Leicester Census...
in that league at that point.
Yeah, Leicester Census, in the Saw Valley Winter League, used to win every year. It was the best team. Some of the anglers, I can name a few: Steve Hemingray, Brad Titmus, John Clark, Derek Moulding, Nick Moss. I could go through, you know, quite a lot. A lot of the names, you know, sort of gone by the by now. A lot of the lads don't fish, but I'm fishing alongside anglers of that sort of calibre.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to keep moving up, fishing alongside good anglers like that, so I could learn more. And that's what, you know, life really meant to me, is getting really good at competition fishing.
Yeah.
Right, so great days, you know, winning the Winter League every year, in other sort of quite big team matches in and around the Midlands.
And when did your own results start sort of getting better and better? Obviously, you mentioned there within them teams, and
that's right.
You moved up from one, so they were obviously seeing that you were doing well as well. It wasn't.
I used to do, back in the day, you know, I used to do really well on the rivers, the natural venue circuit. I used to win several Winter Leagues outright. I was all in the lesser team, Shep Shed and RKC. We had a team champion at the end of the league. You got an Angling Times badge, and you won a pewter, like a trophy.
Yeah.
And I won that, you know, 4 times with Reek. I won it probably 3 times with Shep Shed. I don't remember winning it while I was with Leicester Census, because obviously you're fishing alongside a lot better anglers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to do really well. The 2 main venues I used to fish in them days is the River Store, right through its length. You know, grew up on the river, and the Loughborough Canal, which sort of run adjacent to which, you know, a lot of the lads would know about fishing the Winter League matches on there.
Yeah.
But this was all bloodworm banned in these days, you know, and I used to cup squats in down the middle in the winter and fire a bit of vamp over in the weeds over. They were brilliant fishing, starting chopworm down the ledge, you know, catch some perch quick. I really used to enjoy it, and learning all the time.
With obviously all the team fishing side of things, obviously that's really good for kind of getting you mixing with the good anglers and pushing you forward. If you were kind of coming into fishing today, would that still be the route you'd go down personally, or would you be thinking more of an individual basis, or do you find that being with a team helps push you as an angler?
Right, well, this is really how my transition from natural venue fishing over to the commercial side. I've still got great memories, and probably my best years in fishing was fishing with a successful team, because everyone, you know, looked up to Leicester Census because they were the best team in this sort of Midlands area I used to fish. And when you've done well in a team, it really meant something to me, as well as winning the bigger, you know, natural venue matches in them days, because it really meant something to you. The money was good, because obviously pegging fees are a lot smaller than what they are today now. So answering your question, it's like the reason why I sort of swapped over, and this sort of towards the end of my term with Leicester Census, the fishing seemed to go downhill. It was getting worse and worse. It was becoming, some of the matches with the team were beginning to get a bit of a chore. We're having to travel further and practicing more on really hard venues. So I remember the Bridgewater Canal was a semi-final venue that we had to practice.
My neck of the woods, the Bridgewater Canal. That's the venue I grew up on.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
loving
well,
it. Yeah, I wouldn't want to
remember
to it.
Yeah, well, as I remember, it was, obviously it's cold weather fishing, this winter league practicing is, and it was, I'd done a bit of bloodworm fishing before that term, but the method was fishing a single joker for these perch just down the side of the wall here. You could see them, and you chuck like 1 or 2 jokers in, and it's good, and you'd see a poach take it, and you go down with your rig and try and catch a pair of eyes. So that was like the team method, if you like. And leading up to that, the practicing, I really struggled to get my head around it, to be fair, because I've always liked sort of the bigger fish and that sort of thing. But I always remember coming the day of the match, I won my section because I caught some small rudd like that, which were giant fish out of that canal. Yeah, and I won my section in the Winter League semi-final. I mean, how good's that? And that's what I say, the team got through to the final, which was on the embankment to the Trent. As happy as I'd ever been in fishing, just about, winning my section in the semi-final and getting through to the mighty final on the Trent. Yeah. Didn't do very good on the final. If I knew what I do now back then I'd know the method now how to attack it. But we went through the team and we thought we had a method which really worked pleasure fishing, practicing. But come match day, all the fish were over the other side of the river. But obviously I'd know that now, but at the time it wasn't so apparent. But anyway, right, so with the venues getting harder and harder with this team fishing, and I was fishing lots of open matches during the same time, and this is how it changed for me. One of my favourite venues was the River Avon above the weir at Barford, called the Hop Yard. No, not the Hop Yards. Forget the name of it. It's a bit of dredged river above the weir at Barford. Can't remember what it was called now. But Warwick Portobello used to run the matches on there. And he used to do really well there. It's a deep dredge section, similar to the Saw. And what I'd learned on the Saw in the winter leagues by the Leicester lads is that you had to mix enough ground bait to make 5 really big baby's heads, if you like, get your pole in a rest and ball it in at the start, right on top of your pole, and then you'd run your pinky over it all day long and catch 3 pounder bits like that. And they used to win matches there regularly because I was the only one doing it. Because it took from what I'd learnt on the Saw to the River Avon, and one of the best venues. And I fished it like 2 or 3 years before I made this switch. And it was a match. It was a match on there. Thanks, yeah. Just right. Mouth's getting a bit dry. It was a cold weather match. And oh crap, there was like 35 anglers along this stretch of the Avon, and there's cormorants flying about. And as we remember, in them years, that's when the cormorants seemed to come off the seas, and they wanted to fly around lakes and rivers. And I remember fishing the river that day, with everyone else, and you could see these cormorants flying over. And no one caught a fish except the last 2 pegs in the match down towards where it runs off to the weir, which is obviously, I'm sure, what we know now is the cormorants just move the fish down until they can't go no further, and obviously the anglers catch the fish on the end of the match. I mean, that was one instance, but before that, I'd been in a few really bad matches where most of the anglers are catching nothing. So on the way back home from that match, in my van, driving home, you know, a bit fed up, actually packed up halfway through. I had to travel by Makins Fishery. You know, it was halfway through the day, got plenty of time. I thought I'd just drive into Makins, and then I'd heard about the place, but never set foot on it before. And I drove in down onto the fishery on phase 2, and walked along the lake there, and I come across Snake Pool. You know, it's only a small sort of shallow commercial pleasure angling lake, really, although I fished that many matches on the lake, you know, later on. And you've got pleasure anglers on there, just, you know, your average sort of 1 day a week pleasure angler, fishing wagglers. It's freezing cold, it's probably iced over in the night, and they're catching, you know, big tench like this, roach, odd carp. I thought, well, I mean, what have I been doing all the way travelling there, catching that? And it's as easy as anything catch fish on these places. And soon after that, I didn't fish that day, but soon after that, I got wind of a guy called Rob Bream, a good mate of mine. He was talking to Billy Makin, who owned it in them days, and he was interested. He managed to get Bill Makin to start running a few matches on there. Now, Makins was never built to run matches on. It was just like a pleasure fishing sort of complex that Billy had the forethought into thinking that, you know, the rivers are going downhill and all my anglers are going to come on here, you know, make it worthwhile. So I was always speaking to Rob, you know, indirectly now and again. I used to see him at the matches. He used to fish the Winter League on the Sora. Good mates for Rob. I still am to this day. And he invited me to come along to one of his matches, and it was on phase 2. We had crater, snake, paddock, I think the 2 reptiles, about 40 odd fishing. You know, it got quite popular by then. I'd missed quite a few of the earlier opens on there. I said, yeah, I'll come along. Right, so my first match on there, didn't really know what I was doing, to be fair. I drew peg 4 on the paddock. Not on the paddock, on the crater.
And then is it still the same now? Is it them? Are them lakes still as?
Yeah, exactly the same as it was back then, but there was a lot more fish in it in them days than there is now. Yeah. But still lots of fish in Makins. But what we've got to remember here is there were never really any matches on Makins. You know, none of these fish have been caught and put in keep nets up until the time I started fishing it. And the fishing were brilliant. I remember drawing peg 4 on there. I fished 16 metres, just thinking in my own head that if there's any fish in there, they're, you know, clear, cold. It's during the winter, the water's, you know, really clear. You can see fish moving. There's a lot of fish in there. I mean, it's only shallow lake. And you just fish 16 metres all day with double red hook bait, fishing probably a yard off the island. And I caught fish all day long. And I won the match, £79. I had like great big barbel, carp, every fish, you know, tench, even in them temperatures. It just didn't feel natural to me at all. And I didn't feed a thing. I just dobbed my rig in, dead there, and I caught fish all day long. I fouled a few come off. You think, well, how big were that? But it wasn't any bigger than, you know, any of the rest. It's, you know, you didn't know in them days. But I know why I won that match that day, because no one else ever dreamt of fishing 16 metres in them days.
What pole were you using at that point? Because I'm getting was this late 80s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be about then, yeah. Might be as early as 86, 87.
Yeah.
Right, what pole was it? I think what it was my old spiral titanium.
Yeah.
but that it was only, as I remember, it was a 14.5 metre pole, but I'd had an old DAM pole extension, DAM pole extension that I'd sleeved round the end, the male end of the section, sleeved round it so it fit up the end of me Spiral Pro, and I could get over, that bit further then. That's why
you're already inventing by this point and doing it.
Yeah, slightly, if you call that inventing, yeah. But it just seemed right for me. It's clear like there's 10 anglers around a small pond, and there's not going to be anything close. They're going to be over, as far away as they can get from anyone else. And I won the match easily, as I remember. And from that day, I thought, well, I'm not going anywhere else. I'm just going to do this fishing from now on. From that match, all I wanted to do was commercial fishing, and there wasn't really much about. There was very little internet in them days, if any. I can't remember. I don't remember even having a mobile phone then. But things started moving fairly quickly, as I remember, especially on makings. This was sort of towards the end of the winter when I started fishing it. It was getting warmer, and I used to spend a lot of time pleasure fishing at makings in them early months. And there's just quite a bit in the Angling Times, and there wasn't that many magazines about in them days, as I remember. But anything I could see about catching carp, I could read about. I was reading about it. Trying to learn, I've always tried to sort of learn the best ways to catch fish right through my fishing years. So, Billy was sort of quite what surprises me, because I didn't think Billy had ever sort of allowed a lot of match anglers on his lakes using keep nets. But I don't know whether it was because of the attendances were bigger, than what he could get the pleasure tickets on there. I'm not sure, but soon, there was quite a lot of matches on makings. Always used to prefer the bigger lakes on phase one. Yeah. Because I've always liked big fish, and really rod fishing. I like fishing the pole, but rod fishing has always been my strength, to be fair. So now this is where my sort of invention sort of years started to come in. It was when we were using this frame feeder in the early years of the method, and it went on for a year or two. This not thought about this flat method feeder by then, and as I remember, most of the matches on Lake 2 and Lake 4, which were the two main phase one match lakes, were won with round about 50 to 75 pounds sort of weights, which is, as I remember back, is woefully low for the stock of fishing. There wasn't many in fact, there wasn't many pole fish caught in them days. But I remember Billy had a rule on the makings phase one lakes that poles weren't allowed at one time, because it was thought to be cruel playing a fish for a long while on thin elastic, tiring it out too much. So that was Billy's thinking as to banning poles on the bigger lakes. But
what sort of size were the fish back then in phase one?
They're smaller than they are now, but they're similar. There are a lot of sort of up to 8 pound size fish.
Yeah. So I suppose before puller kits and everything like that, it's going to be a decent old scrap.
That's right. I think the biggest elastic you could get was a Preston slip was an 8, or Zim done elastic was an 8 again. There wasn't nothing really much higher than that, but we soon got around that by doubling elastics up in the top kits and that. But the rule didn't last long. Billy sort of found out that by using strong elastics, and the fish aren't really getting worn out, over exhausted on the pole. So they were starting to get allowed, poles were, but it was always like the rod fishing. Rarely a match was won on the pole. It was, you know, the lads on the method that would win, but on the M-stat, as we knew it.
Yeah.
And I fished like quite a lot of matches on there and other places. We were going out, you know, also around the country, in the Midlands. And the first match, I come home one day and I thought, I'm getting lots of liners on this method. I'm getting one fish now and again, and I'm thinking, I know how many fish are in makings. It was full in that way, and something's not right here. So I just thought to myself, I've got a half. I used to make really small sort of adaptations of the M-stat, you know, get less bait on it, but the principle wasn't right, you know, with the way the bait's put on the feeder, because half of it's sort of underneath the feeder, which isn't no good. You needed all the bait on top of the feeder, the right amount, and that was the way to go. And the first time I used a flat invention of my own was on a lake at Castle Ashby, the fishery there. This was probably the following winter, because it was iced over that day. And I remember half the lake was ice. And we all had to be pegged along one bank and cast to the ice. And I thought, well, I might as well, no one had even knew. I didn't even know it would work. It was just an idea I had of, you know, it might work. So I thought, right, shut or bust. This is one I'm going to fish today. One rod, chuck to the end of the ice and see how we go. And I won the match I won that one on the crater. I don't think I'd ever won a commercial match other than that first match I fished on the crater. And I caught 4 big fish on the method on a freezing cold Castle Ashby Lake, and that won the match. I thought, how good's this? You know, back in them days, with no one putting pellets on the method by then, it was just a ground bait and a single red maggot. So a few months went on, a few more matches on makings, and I took it on late too. And you know, that's where it really hit home to me that I'm onto something here. And to refine the feeder, it was still a bit clumsy in them days at Castle Ashby, using the fox feeder, which was plastic and a bit big. And you know, find it down to a bit of lead and wire in the end. That's all it was, with a bit of elastic on. And that made it for me. You know, now these next sort of 3, 4, 5 years of fishing this feeder on makings and other venues, you know, were my best money earning years, if you want to call them, in match fishing.
Did you let anyone into this at this point? Had you sort of shown any of your close mates, or was this?
I was giving them away.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. So you sort of keeping it up your sleeve, sort of thing.
No, I mean, really, the possibility was there to do that, but you're like this and it's hanging behind you. And in them days, as I remember, which you'd never pegged the lakes like you know, like you would back then now, is every peg was in on makings.
Yeah.
You know, you're not even 10 yards away from the next angler. And, you know, the B side of makings, round that bowl, if you put every peg in there, you're like that by the time you're over there. The pegging was that tight in them days that it was hard to hide what you were doing. But I was willing to show others. You know, I wasn't really that sort of person who wanted to keep things behind, you know, out of the way, although in hindsight, you know, to what I know in this now, I would have been a bit more sort of try and keep it to my chest. But no, I was, you know, some lads, good feeling at the end of the match, winning all the matches. It was unbelievable. And of course, you know, you won, it's great, you're in a happy mood. I'm giving a few feeders out to my mates.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You do
Yeah.
you win, you're more generous, aren't you? It's when you've
That's
done
right.
so well, you don't want
It's
to tell
like when you're in the pub and you've had a few whiskies and all the secrets start coming out.
Because was it one of those where you gave someone a method feeder and you saw their results improved, or was it more than just the feeder itself?
Definitely. I'm going to mention a name here now, and I only spoke to him recently on Facebook. He put a post up actually of all his homemade method feeders, only probably a month ago. And I'm thinking, well, some of them feeders are mine there, and my old wire and lead feeders. Very good, yeah. And chatting to Colin Perry, the one and only, and Colin said on that he ran out of feeders that day, was pegged next to him, and I'm getting a fish draw, I won the match. But because he'd run out of feeders, good bloke Colin, nicest bloke in the world. Yeah, Colin, put that on your line. Have a, then he's caught 5 fish in the next, hour fishing with it. And I know Collins, he went home that night and made, enough for like the next, few outings fishing. But that's just Colin. I mean, I was giving them out to, I was a member of a club, Gedling Tackle. Great set of lads who used to run a lot of matches on makings. And I was giving them out. And I was, during the big winter leagues at makings, that was the team I fished for, Gedling Tackle. And of course, to do well in a team match, you've got to be on the right methods. So I was giving them out to the team members so the team could do well. So it soon became apparent that the only feeder you needed on these big mates was a flat method feeder. It all goes from there really. I mean, I still fish makings quite a lot, up to present day. Not as much as I used to, because there are a lot of other venues about. It's not the venue it was makings, not by any sort of stretch of imagination. There's a lot fewer fishing there. Still well kept, and it's a good fishery. You've got a lot of variation in the methods that you can use on the fishery. But keep going there, every time you went fishing, after a few years, you sort of want to change yourself. So I like to spread it around a bit now, change the scenery, different things.
In them early days, so obviously that decision to move on to commercials has been a brilliant one for yourself in terms of your profile, Preston Innovations, the products that you and Preston Innovations have come up with that have sort of stemmed from your ideas. The flatbed method feeder, obviously, we know how popular that has been. But that decision to go on to commercial has been really good for yourself. You've been in Fishermania finals, Embassy Pairs finals, big Winter League events, the list goes on. But probably the biggest achievement that you sort of state is the sheer number of matches that you win every single year. So you sort of say it's probably 50 plus match wins every year still to this day. At what point did sort of your attention turn to, like you were just getting to there, with different venues, bigger matches like the Fishermania qualifiers and stuff? When did you start sort of fishing those sorts of events?
That was in my younger years when your confidence grows great, with winning lots of matches, your confidence grows. What I've missed out on this, and I shouldn't have done really, is it's just, missed my mind, is that transition from the, I was sponsored in my natural venue fishing, but only from a team sponsor point of view with Leicester Census. We used to get bait and some clothing through the team. But it wasn't until I made the switch to commercial fishing, starting to win these big matches, that I was sponsored by Trevor for the first 3 years of that through the bait. But I wasn't really sort of winning lots of matches then. And then that had to finish because Preston came along. That had to finish. and that's when sort of I was giving me ideas away to Preston, to making it, the bigger and better sort of company. But before Sonu sort of was born, which is a few years later, I got helped out. My census sponsorship had ended, and I got helped out with Dynamite Baits, because Dynamite Baits was the bait to use at Makins as a fishery pellet. So that went on for a year or two. And I've lost my way a bit here now.
your lad playing with his building blocks next
yeah, so where was I heading with all this?
So
I missed out on my sponsor.
Yeah, but then so you've been in fish show finals and some bigger.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, with even with a sponsor, everyone's sort of on the man in the lie. Everyone wants to. Well, I don't know what the word is really, but I wanted to get better. Well known, I'd say, because Makins is still like the sort of Midlands mecca of the commercial fishing. Although it all started at Mallory Park, so I shouldn't miss that out.
You like my credit card?
Yeah, I love it. It's really good. So, because I was really confident winning all these commercial matches, so I've got to get in these qualifiers, because there's every chance, especially if the method's allowed, that I'm going to get through on these qualifiers. And I remember that I think it was, I can't remember it. I've only fished a few Fishermania qualifiers ever. I fished probably 5, I think, a handful in my whole career, because I soon got the gist of it. The day I qualified was at Makins, and believe it or not, it was on phase 2 and 3, not phase 1, but I thought I'd go in for it, because there's a few rod chucking pegs on phase 2 and 3, not many. Went in the draw bag, pegged 25 on 7. Couldn't believe it. I remember Tommy Pickering was there just doing the commentary. I said, Tommy, look what I've got, 25 on 7. It's the best peg on phase 3 if you want to chuck a rod. I couldn't believe it. And it's in the garage now. Okay. And I remember starting the match, fishing the method on the pole, caught quite a few big fish early, and then had to chase the fish along the bank up to the rail, and chucking a small method there. And I won the match with not a big weight, about £70 of that. And I'm straight into it wasn't the first qualifier I'd fished, probably the second, might have been the third, I can't remember. But I've fished like only a couple of qualifiers, and I'm in the final already. The final didn't go very well for me. I drew a good peg, and I didn't. Still guessing in them years. If I knew, again, what I know now, if I knew it back in that qualifier day, then I could have won the match easily, because it was a.
Where was the final at that point?
Sorry, Rich.
Where was the final at that point?
Oh, it was Hayfield on Adams Lake.
Yeah.
And it was when floaters were allowed. So you can tell, no one was still really sure about rules or, the way matches should be fished if you're allowing floaters. But I didn't really know a lot about floaters. I'd not fished them. And a guy called Rob Hitchens, he won the match by fishing floaters off the end of his pole, as I remember. There were only a few pegs up from me, but there was more fish where I was. I was on a brilliant peg, the M peg 16, I think it was. Yeah. The 16 anglers in the final in them days. So, in years gone by, even to this day, I'm still kicking myself, because I know I could have won it on that peg if I had like a small bag of dog biscuits. That's all the only bait I needed. That's how I got into these bigger matches. And because I always remember, because I was with Preston Innovations, I was sponsored, by that time. I thought it was my duty really to fish what was that restarted the UK Champs competition.
Yep.
And it was all on carp venues.
Preston sponsored the UK Champs at that point.
That's right, yeah. And it was all on carp venues, so I thought, that'll do for me, why not? And great competition, 4 matches throughout the summer. I nearly won it one year, really close to winning it. I ended up 3rd that year, but it was one fish, between winning it and coming 3rd. And I don't know, Jane, sorry. That's your mummy. That was really, that's one competition I really wanted to win because all the good anglers were in it, who's who were in it. 70 peg match, I think it was in them days. Every well-known angler was in it. England internationals, the whole lot, they're all in it. And in the end, that first year I fished it. No, hold on a minute, I'm wrong there. The first year I fished it, I was winning it right up to the last match. And I had a terrible last match at Hayfield where I caught 4 fish in the last half hour. It was terrible, fishing shallow on the pole. And from leading it into the last match, ended up 6th, which I still won like decent money.
Yeah.
But I got that close that year. And the next year I ended up 3rd in it. Whereas one fish would have caused me to win it. One extra fish on the last day at Woodland View would have caused me to win it.
Yeah.
And I fished it a few other, years after that. And, it was still like the main competition I wanted to win because of who was fishing it. And they had good venues, caught lots of fish. And it was really the time when I stopped fishing the UK Champs was when Preston stopped sponsoring it, I think. I was starting to sort of localise me fishing a bit more in them years. So I remember they had a few of the rounds down at Viaduct.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, I remember I fished a few rounds down there and it worked out. I was out of the house 21 hours of the day and I was fishing a match for 5 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm getting on, I'm not the youngest guy in the match.
Yeah.
I'm starting thinking to myself, am I doing, driving by all these places? Is it going to be worth it? So that's really the last sort of year I fished the UK Champs. But good memories of it, really enjoyed the company, good anglers everywhere. And, beating some of them, nothing better than that.
No. So you mentioned there, obviously, you've always sort of focused relatively local. You had those couple of years where you were travelling a bit further apart for those competitions, but those local matches, and you say is roughly about 50 matches every year. You've won over your sort of angling career. You've won thousands of matches. It's well over 1,000 matches. I think we worked that out one time when I was with the magazine. I think we sort of went through it a little bit.
Yeah, I've never actually counted the matches I win over a year. But yeah, I would say, that's what I'd stick myself at, round about, on average, 50 matches a year. But remember, they're not all big matches, and I go fishing a lot, because I'm self-employed. I get plenty of time to go fishing.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously that as well for Preston Innovations, that link and you being able to create your own products. Obviously, your mind for innovation, it makes you a huge asset for Preston Innovations. Does that make you proud that you can put your name to certain products that a company as big as Preston Innovations have in their catalogue? And think basically things like the method feeder, you can put your name to it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I love being with Preston. I've been approached by other firms over this, I don't know how long I've been with Preston now. I should know, but
years, 25 years.
I'd imagine, sort of, late 90s, I would have thought. I don't know offhand, but, over this course of the time I've been with Preston, I've had, offers from other bait companies and some tackle firms, but my answer is why? Why should I want to leave Preston? They've got the best bait, the best tackle, I think the best anglers, up to current date. So, where else is there to go? That's the way I look at it. And not only that, my past with Preston, what I've designed and helped the company, grow bigger and bigger, I'm not going nowhere.
Obviously, the method feeder you're renowned for. Are there any other products perhaps that you've come up with which people might not necessarily know that you were behind?
Well, I'm glad you've asked that, because I'd like to mention a few. I believe I'm the one who's invented them, but I might be wrong. But it's something that probably most of my commercial fishing is rather than sort of learn off other anglers, like I used to in the natural venue sort of years. Most of my commercial fishing has come from my own thinking, and I fish the way I think rather than watching someone and try and fish shallow for F1s like, the young lad up there who's battering, getting one or two. It's not really my sort of fishing. The way I fish is from my own sort of way of thinking. So, yeah, like things such as pellet feeders. I believe I invented the pellet feeder. I remember the first match on Makings, I took a homemade pellet feeder too on 9A, going back in the big match days, soon after, not long after the flat method was born. The first Winter League match there, it was late October, and I had 188 pounds on Lake 2, just fishing with a tiny pellet feeder. And that's what the original Preston pellet feeder was made out of, which you've got one on the wall here. Funny enough.
Yeah, I remember them.
So they were actually made off of this pellet feeder that I used on Makings that day, which I still think is a brilliant feeder, but sadly they're no longer made. Got like later versions out now. Yeah. So that's one thing.
What had you done there? Had you just got some lead and a bit of plastic and moulded it around it, or how had you done your initial?
Right, it just so happened that I've got a made up one here, because I was speaking to Joe this morning. That's how that come about. It was very similar to this. This is sort of a later model. I don't know. Can you see that?
Yeah.
All it is a tube, like a rod tube, but I've made it cone shape with a base of lead on it and a bit of elastic on the front with a short hook length.
Yeah.
And just trapping small moist pellets in there with an expander pellet hook bait. And it were brilliant. Probably the best pellet feeder you'd ever use today.
Is that open at both ends on there, or is that?
It's open at both ends, but because it's cone shaped, I think you can see. Can you see that it's cone shaped?
Yeah.
When the pellets are compacted in there, the water gets in and the pellets come out. They only come out this way because it's cone shaped. It forces the pellets out one way only. Yeah. If that makes sense. I used to put line, like a line grill in on the near end, to stop that from happening when it was a parallel tube. But because it's made in a cone, then you don't need that. The pellets just come out this way, which is where the fish's mouth is.
Yeah.
So
with things like that, is that just a case that you'll sit at home playing with it, testing it in tanks, just to get everything behaving how you want it to happen?
Yeah. When the first time I used a flat method feeder at Castle Ashby, I never really tested that, or it's not that I remember testing it. I probably put some bait on it at home, just so it wouldn't look silly when I went to cast it out and it all fall off behind me. but don't remember testing that, although I might have done. And possibly I'd have done the same with the pellet feeder there. But I wasn't one to go out and play with it pleasure fishing. I wanted to fish and match with it, you know, get the true reading from it, so to speak.
Yeah, because it's kind of staying on the subject of feeders. Obviously, methods you've used a lot. What do you feel nowadays with a lot of people kind of moving on to hybrid feeders and stuff like that? Do you still use them as much as you used to, or is there certain situations you prefer one over the other?
Yeah, well, that's a brilliant point. Now, it's never liked the hybrid feeder. Never been a fan of it. I still, to this day, think that you can't beat the method, especially once the water warms up a bit. You know, you catch bigger fish on it. It's the best way of presenting a bait because it's just open on the top. There's only the ribs really that hold the bait on, and your bait should be above them ribs even when it's broken up. So there's nothing. It's hard to better the method. The banjo feeder, you know, coming off the last question, that was another one of my inventions, which I believe to this day is the right shape, the roundness of the banjo. That is the right shape. The original banjo, I'm not talking about, you know, the Jura banjo Preston got for sale now. I still prefer the round shape because, you know, it's like a bait on a plate. It's right in the middle of it and it's the right shape. But it doesn't cast very well, round feeder. So you either need a stem.
More of a short distance sort of feeder.
That's right, yeah. But I've got, you know, I'm thinking all the time on different feeders, even to this day. But you can't go much further with a feeder design. There's, you know, variations on the theme, but we've about got everything out there, I think.
There must be stuff that you've had in your mind, which obviously creating stuff that sells is often different, or obviously you have to bring things out if it sells, but also if it works as well. But creating something that sells is different to something that necessarily works for you.
Exactly right. That is.
And because the creations in your mind which just aren't sort of viable to sell, so that you do, but just aren't necessarily viable.
That's right. I've come across some brilliant fish catching sort of rigs and other things that can't really be sold because they're just a series of knots, you know, or even like the pellet cone, another one of my inventions, the pellet cone, where you use a pole bung to hold your elastic in.
You cut down.
A brilliant method. The first time I used that going on these big waters, I'm winning every match. You know, no carp had ever seen it before. It was just something I thought of, a match on Lake 4 towards the end of the winter league. I've not had a bite all day, and just playing with these soft pellets that I had on my bait tray, I moulded them round my hook length and slid them down to my corn hook bait on a bomb rig, chucked that out, had a 20-pounder the first cast, and a smaller carp the second cast, and won the lake in the last 15 minutes. It's something I just thought of on the moment. And then from that day, I thought about cutting down a pole bung to use as a cone that you could pop the pellets out. And it's a brilliant method, and it still would be to this day. It's more of a cold water method. So carrying on, we've got pellet feeders, we've got the pellet cone, we've got the banjo feeder, quick stops. I still believe that was my idea. I know I read something on the back of a tackle company's product saying that these stops had been thought of, you know, long time ago. I think there's even a date on there. Yeah. Well, I don't remember any quick stop before I thought about it, and I definitely didn't get the idea from that. Yeah. But I remember in the Ricky Teal years when Ricky and I worked together developing these products, going up to Preston Innovations and saying, I'm getting fed up with, I used to use punch meat. This is a bit further on from the flat method feeder. But it used to be a loop, and you had to fiddle with getting a stop inside the little loop. And I went up and says, Ricky, can't we design something that's permanently attached to your hook, you know, onto your hair, that you can just spear through a bait and take your needle off? And within a month, it come back from China, the perfect thing, a clear quick stop.
Yeah.
And how successful has that been? Amazing invention.
I think that's something with Preston Innovations, is how quickly we can sort of turn an idea into a physical product. And sometimes that happens, an idea is made. And I think this is something Rich was getting at with this particular question, like turning something, what is an idea, into a product. Sometimes that's not always viable. Sometimes it's in your head, you try it, and it just doesn't work in person when the physical product's there. Sometimes, like the method feeder and like a lot of the other products that you've come up with, it works, and it's gonna catch anglers more fish. So yeah, definitely with yourself, there's the list's endless with what you've come up with and what's actually came into fruition.
Yeah, sure. I think that's probably quite a good point on what you were saying with the pellet cone, because it's something different, it works. So do you find that constantly trying to come up with something new just so you're doing something different to other anglers is a big kind of driving force behind it, that you've got that year or two where it might work, and then it slowly, as everyone else gets onto it, it starts petering off a bit? Definitely.
That's you know, you notice it through, because hours on the bank really is what gets you thinking about these things. And after a while, you know, everyone's using the same product that seems to work the best. And then pegs sort of dictate more than the anglers. You know, the fishing levels itself out, and it gets to a point where the guys that are on the most fish are winning the matches when everyone's using the same version. I know for a fact, like that day on Lake 2, when the first time I chucked the pellet feeder out, I'd have never caught that amount of fish on the method. And I remember when I come out with the banjo feeder, the first match of fish that was on, Lake 4 on Matings, a good peg on there in the warmer months, was peg 25 on Lake 4, it's the end of the island. And had 163 pounds and won the match easy just by using a banjo feeder. It'd never been thrown into the lake before, and it was that, you know, that good. And again with the pellet cone, I used to go Earlswood, you know, a long time after they stopped it. The fish had got big by then. Earlswood, there was Meadowlands when I used to fish it in them days. Other big waters, mostly big waters, because that's really where the pellet cone's suited for. And I was winning straight away. I remember going Meadowlands. The first time I went Meadowlands, first time I fished it, was in the middle of winter, and I drew peg 9 something on the high bank of Lansdowne Lake. And I drew my peg and I thought, I didn't know anything. Asking the lads, what's that like? Is that any good? Well, it's not that good. You catch a few stockies there, they were telling me. I thought, oh, well, give it a go as you do. As far as I could, out in the middle of the lake with a pellet cone, double red I think I had on the hook in them days. Put the rod down. 5 hours later, 93 pound a carp, like this.
Yeah.
No one could believe it.
Stockies.
It'd never been thrown in the lake. And I was winning like most of the matches for the next few months on there, just doing that. Yeah. They were great.
That's the point where you must know that you've got something working for you, where you're winning off those pegs that you don't expect. Because obviously, if you go and draw a flyer and win, everyone's just going to expect it anyway. But if it's one of those pegs, everyone's like, yeah, you're not going to win off there, but you turn around and do something like that, then I suppose it's, you know, you've got something right.
You're onto something, yeah. You know, I mean, I might be wrong here, but this is what I believe. The paste pot, really important piece of kit, that. Perhaps the Preston ones need to be, you know, looked at, you know, as time goes on. But it's a really important bit of kit. It's got to be on right on the end of your pole, and everything's got to slide in nice with your loose feed as well. and the way of fishing it really sloppy. I don't think anyone done that before I started fishing it. And again, I was taking that to venues and winning every match with it in the warmer months, you know, by just fishing more or less water and ground bait on the hook. And the elastic's just flying out. Before you get a bite, the elastic's out your pop. Yeah. And it's just telling you, you know, fish have never seen this before. It makes a big difference.
Yeah. Well, one of my first ever features with yourself was we were filming an episode of I think it was Pole Fishing Plus, and we were in the boards peg on Uglies at the Glebe.
I remember it.
And
with the one and only Alex Bones, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were with Alex.
Trimmed down Alex Bones, though.
We were with Alex. I think it was myself, Alex, and Joe. We were all there. And
that's right.
I remember we were fishing sweet corn paste at that point, and you were blending. And that.
Yeah, that's about.
I obviously knew yourself working in tackle shops. I knew obviously with Sonu, the bait and everything, and you were always the cover star for Sonu. And DVDs and stuff, but that was the first time I'd sort of seen it up close, and I just knew at that point you just think differently than a lot of, well, pretty much every angler I've ever met. There's always something that you're doing a bit different. Obviously corn paste isn't something what everyone else does, but it was something. Corn worked at the Glebe, it was the best bait at the Glebe. Everything pointed in the direction that by combining corn and paste,
that's right. Well, the way corn paste come about was because of the venue, the Glebe, because the anglers had been throwing that much meat in there, and I'd won that many matches on the Glebe leading up to the time as meat getting banned on there, because the anglers were following suit and throwing that much meat in, and we all know now that meat is bad for a fishery, and rightly so. Roy Marlowe banned it. So I had to find out, right, ground bait paste is a really good paste. Not as good as corn paste for these sort of things, what we need to catch on paste. And that's how corn paste come about. I needed to find a paste that wasn't meat paste and that could be used on the Glebe, you know, make a big ball of it. The amount of corn that goes in the Glebe, every fish in there knows what corn is. And the first, I was next to Joe actually on the David Hall Memorial match. We were on pool 7, and I drew next to Joe, and I thought, oh, we're going to have a bit of a ding dong here. Yep. And that was the first match I used the corn paste in, and kicking myself to this day because I didn't go on it early enough. I fed corn on my short line up until the last hour. Well, I was going to want to chuck on the feeder, building your weight as you do. But the last hour I dropped on it, straight under, got one £10, and had something like 5 more of that type of fish. Yeah. And that was the end of the match. You know, I could have, I ended up 3rd in the match as I remember, and 2nd on my late that day, but I could have won the match quite easily, you know, but that sort of put it in my head how good corn paste is on a venue like the Glebe. I'm not saying it's going to work on every venue. You need a good head of big fish for it to work. But yeah, it's about underused and should be used a lot more.
Yeah, and we're sort of getting towards the end of this particular section, but obviously a serial trait of an innovator is always having stuff up your sleeve, always tinkering with different products. So is there anything that you have up your sleeve at the moment that maybe you're not sort of letting out the bag at the moment, that's just on the back burner ready to unleash?
Can't say there is really. I mean, anything I think of I mean, you can think of loads of things, but if they don't work, then it's no good sort of banging it about. But anything I come across that I know's good and it's going to work, then it's straight up to Preston. You know, they're the first to know about it. And what I'd say about what you've just asked me is this expander pellet hook bait on the Method.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I've banged on about it that long now, and I still believe it don't really matter what venue you're fishing. If you're after skimmers and carp, right, that's the only bait you want on the hook while fishing the method. Well, it's got to be the right expander and prepared the same way. You know, it's what's vitally important, the same as what goes on the method feeder. But people just can't get their heads around it. I mean, it's something that's been out for a while now, but
I think that people sort of think that with an expander, they're not 100% sure
that's right.
whether it's going to be on when they've cast. But that's the importance of where you've shown in certain videos that the colder that you prepare your expanders, the tougher that they stay. Is how important it is when you're preparing them. Basically, you need to do it in that way so that they're tougher.
It is key preparation. It's not only the expander, but the mix that goes onto the feeder. It needs time, which I've explained, you know. But it's from seeing it done to actually getting it right yourself. I think there's a bit of a, you know, there might be improvement there. I'm not sure, but I still see lots of anglers fishing other hook baits when that's not the best hook bait on the method. You know, I'm 100% on that, but that's just my view anyway.
Yeah.
Obviously, when it comes to expanders as a hook bait, what's your thoughts on actually why they work? Because obviously, in my head at least, the fact that they're soft, the fish doesn't know that until they've eaten it. So is it something else that it's how it acts in the water or the colour or the visual aspect that you feel is something that makes it better than a hard pellet, for example?
Yeah, well, I think it's got lots of things going for it. Probably the main thing is it smells. It's nice to a fish, no doubt. You know, it's wet and it's a pellet. It's full of fish meal and oil, which we all know carp love. So that's one thing it's got going for it against something like a bit of corn or even meat or a rock hard bandam, let's say. Other things is by the time, although it's a sinking expander when you put it on your hair rig, you've used the mould and pressed it on the feeder. When everything breaks up like it should do, and it's laying there as a soup over your ground bait, by the time that expander's sort of retracted back to its original shape, then it's light and fluffy again and makes it near enough, you know, neutral buoyancy, similar to like what a wafter does. So again, the fish has just got to breathe near the mix and then it goes. You know, that's another good thing it's got going for it. 4 mil expander is lots better than a 6 mil expander. It's swelled up to 6 mil when it's presented, but likewise a 6 mil is like an 8 mil. So, and that's just too obvious to a fish. So size is right for the method. You know, there's 3 really important things as a hook bait on the method. Really, the fish only use pellets on the method, which I've said before. I don't think there's any need for ground bait if you get your pellets right. And the pellets are breathing up the carp are breathing up the pellets, and why should it be, you know, cautious of a softer pellet, you know, than what it's feeding?
Yes. So you're kind of going down the school of thought of a bait that blends into it rather than sort of something that's bright and stands out.
What I've always said about the method, it's not really your hook bait. What's important to a degree, your hook bait is what's on your feeder. And I believe the fish you catch on the method is the fish that's at most your bait. It's a competition. You get 2 or 3 fish around the feeder, then one wants to eat it faster than the other one, and that's the fish you catch most of the time. Obviously, things slow down as the water gets colder, but the principle's the same, but it just takes longer to happen.
Yeah, definitely.
And so we'll wrap this section up. What are your targets for the sort of the coming years? What have you sort of set yourself, or your goals in your angling for the next few years?
yeah, well, carry on as I am. I've never been sort of one to see, you know, big things on the horizon or ambitions to break, but I like winning. What keeps me going in fishing is winning and learning. Everyone's still learning, you know, some might think they're not, but they are. There's always this expander lark. It's only come about in the last 2 years possibly. You know, that's just a new thing really. So combination of winning and finding out better ways of catching fish. They're the two things that, for hopefully will keep carrying on.
Excellent. Right, we'll wrap that section up. The next bit is the talking point.